Hi, my name is Sabrina Tenório Luna. I am a professor of cinema at the Federal University of Mato Grosso in Brazil. I am a doctor in communication at the Federal University of Pernambuco in Brazil. And since the PhD, I have been researching found footage movies and movies made with pre-existing images in general. So today I'm gonna talk about the paper titled Recycling Images and Creating New Meanings, the use of home movies and amateur photography in Brazilian contemporary short films. So, in this article, we intend to analyze 3 Brazilian contemporary short films that are made from pre-existing amateur photography. Travessia, directed by Safira Moreira from 2017, O Pantanal é Preto, directed by 𝗷𝗀𝘀𝘁𝗿𝗁 from 2022, and 𝗔𝗯𝘀𝘁𝗿𝗁, directed by Lia Leticia in 2019. So, the 3 movies are experimental documentaries that are made from material found in flea market and from the own family photographs of the director. So, in this article, we are going to talk about image appropriation and recycling in order to create new narratives. So, we are going to deal with concepts such as technical images, mediated memories, and representations. Photographies and technical images, such as books and writing documents, are mediated memories, representing, when evoked at different times, elements of its original time. They are, therefore, potentially archivable. When I talk about archive, I use the concept debated by Derrida when he says that archive comes from the Greek archeion, originally a house, a domicile, an address, the residence of the higher magistrates, the archons, those who commanded. So the archons were responsible for the guard as well as the interpretation of the archives. But nowadays, actually, since between the end of the last century and the beginning of the 21st century, we are, according Beatriz Sarlo, dealing with a subjective turn in the studies of history and memory. So this subjective turn has as its main characteristics questioning traditional power spaces and official sources of memory transmission, and made possible something that would go beyond the appreciation of details of the past, exceptions to the rules, and curiosities to come to the center of the investigations. So, the appropriation of materials, especially photographs and moving images, is directly related to the capacity of the proposed device to create the conditions for such practice to activate sensitive experience in the present, necessarily different from those originally experienced, but with the same level of density. So, in the contemporary appropriation, these sensitive experiences that are felt in the present by using images from the past are in many ways related to themes that are related to criticism of coloniality and representation of race, gender, and sexuality. So our objective in this work is, through the analysis of these films, we intend to reflect about the use of mediated memories as a way of rereading histories and its representations, offering a different point of view that makes justice to the ones excluded by official archives. We believe that this process opens space to new creating and places of guard and maintenance of mediated memories, which not only offers reflections about the exclusions operated by institutional spaces of powers, as well as contributed to the ampliation of this space, embracing narratives that are no longer created by dominant groups. The first movie we are going to analyze here is Travessia, directed by Safira Moreira. It's a 5-minute movie. So, Travessia emerged from the historical lack of analogic photographs that represent the Black population in Brazil. So, in order to realize this movie, Safira Moreira started to research by family albums in street markets in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, that showed a black woman. So she found this picture that you can see here in the slide, and in the album of a white family. So the film starts from this photograph. So the work powerfully dialogues about both the erasure caused by the lack of photographic archives and family albums owned by black families in Brazil, as well as the excess of images represented by the album of white families for sale at street fairs. That she found and used in order to make this movie. So, in the act of appropriation of the family album, Moreira evokes her ancestry and gives new rise to new imagetic archives. So, the montage shows the photograph that pictures a black woman with a white baby in her arms, first in parts, while we hear in the sound band the reading of the poem Vozes Mulheres of the black writer Conceição Evaristo. So after seeing this picture in parts and hearing the poem, we see the back of the picture. In the back of the picture, we don't see the name of the woman, only of the baby, 𝗁𝗁𝘁𝗿𝗁𝘁. She is just named as a nanny. So the woman in the photo is not named, but she enters history through an appropriation that calls for a record that encompasses the director's ancestry and demands that institutions and the space of power and knowledge recognize that both publicly and privately archives and memory repositories have been mostly based on exclusion. So, in the absence of photographs that can be inserted with due credits in the album of Black Family, the director appropriates the image, the family archives of white families, and analyzes the country's slave owning past present through a critical fabulation. So, critical fabulation, according to Saidiya Hartman, is a strategy designed as a way to recover the slavery past without inflicting double suffering on the present, on the people in the present. So, by proposing to tell impossible stories from the point of view of the official archives, Hartman asks herself whether it is possible to exceed or negotiate the constitutive limits of the archives. So, when analyzing Travessia, we believe that the critical fabulation of a supposedly impossible history is not only being operated, but is also founded from a perspective distinct from that contained in the materials appropriated by the director. Travessia is an appropriation that uses its own means, technical, legal, and ethical, to deconstruct a discourse and create new paths, highlighting the lack of distinction between the public and private spheres regarding responsibility for the slavery system and its legacies. The film also highlights how the appropriation of what is considered so excessive for some that it has no archival value, places the image in another dimension by changing the place of enunciation. So the film considers memory and amnesia together instead of opposing them. In doing so, it raises pressing questions of our time and opens a space for new voices and narratives. The next movie we're going to analyze here is O Pantanal é Preto, directed by 𝗁𝗁𝘁𝗿𝗁𝘁 Chaves. It's a 5-minute movie. So, O Pantanal é Preto follows the resistance trajectory of the black population in the Pantanal between the 1980s and the 1990s. By using analogical photos of his own family, the director demarcates that the Pantanal is made, like much of the Brazilian country, by black and indigenous peoples. According to the director, they are not just pawns or maids, they are the Pantanal itself, although they are not pictured as the owners in official archives. Chaves makes use of the family photographs in order to show that the assumption about the area is wrong. The film is from the state of Mato Grosso do Sul, which has 30% of its territory occupied by the biome. Pantanal occupies two states of Brazil, Mato Grosso, which occupies 35% of the territory, and Mato Grosso do Sul, which contains 65%. So, one of the largest continuous flooded areas in the planet, Pantanal is also the place of conflict with landowners who both invade indigenous villages and increasingly use them for extensive farming. So, according to Antônio Weirinchter, the use of amateur and homemade images is one of the characteristics of films made from pre-existing images that becomes more strongly reflected from the 1980s onwards. The montage shows pictures of Pantanal farms and use quotes by Frantz Fanon. In the sound band, we hear dialogue that reproduce the accent common in the area, but little recognized externally, even within Brazil itself. In the imagery band, we see analog photographs displayed to a red filter, which navigates through the images. These occupy various frames within the screen, in an editing that brings the film closer to the experimental field. In the sound band, we hear a voiceover asking the following question repeatedly: "Who are you?" In the final part of the film, we hear a dialogue between the voiceover, the narrator, and a woman, who asks, with a strong accent from the Pantanal area, "Why can't you govern this world?" The dialogue takes place between the director and his grandmother, strengthening the issue of using family archives as a basis for filmmaking. By using images of his family and placing his grandmother at the center of the debate, the director operates through the choice of personal and subjective, a critic to the official histories about the region. In this way, he presents aspects that have been neglected by official history, telling a collective history from a personal perspective. Now we are going to talk about 𝗔𝗍𝗂, directed by Lia Leticia, a 16-minute movie. So the photographs used for the making of 𝗔𝗍𝗂 were acquired by Lia Leticia at the street market of 𝗔𝗯𝘀𝘁𝗿 in Berlin, Germany, while she was in an artist's residency in the city. The photographs are from German family albums between the 1960s and 1990s, whose specific origins are not investigated. Leticia's works of reassembly and appropriation of the image serve as a basis for the debate on colonialism and its effects that persist to this day. So, the photographs are assembled in conjunct with excerpts from the books Two Journeys to Brazil from 1557 by Hans Staden and Travels in Brazil from 1823 by Spix and Matthews. Hans Staden's books can even be considered one of the founding documents of Brazil. The book is based on a colonialist perspective and became a bestseller in Europe when it was released, presenting the territory and its inhabitants to the European continent through the explorer's eyes. The work does not specifically talk about the people depicted in the pictures, but rather about a whole collective responsibility illustrated by the appropriated images. 𝗔𝗍𝗂 starts from the document, from the place of knowledge and power, the one responsible for defining the image of an era and transmitting it through generations. The works it appropriates relate the experience of the white European civilized man and relegate the local inhabitant, the indigenous people, as well as the space they occupy, to elements susceptible to colonization and domination. The starting points call into question the fact that just as culture is not exempt from barbarity, neither is the process of transmitting culture, as written by Walter Benjamin. The texts that are appropriated are also mediated memories, materials generated in such a way as to trigger future memories produced through mediated technologies, be they pen or cameras. The appropriation of the texts, which serves as the basis for the montage of the images, is completed in its translation into the 𝗷𝗀𝘁𝗿𝗁𝘁 language of the Funio people of Pernambuco. Tiniá is Maria's Pastora's indigenous names, and she narrates the excerpts of the books translated into her language. The montage is based mainly on the comparison of the photographs found on the album of the 𝗔𝗯𝘀𝘁𝗿 families with the excerpts narrated by Tiniá. In an anthropophagic move, Tiniá appropriates the voice of the colonizing narrator and uses the archives of its descendants to settle the score. The original speech is highlighted and brought to the present in an ironic and sarcastic way. The film also questions a certain archival images, that is a concept that I used from Barrientos, from the indigenous people from the New World, built by European colonizer and transmitted by its mediated memories, among which we highlight the books that have the excerpts read by the narrator. In confronting images of photographs of European people with the aggressive texts that describe indigenous peoples as savage, cannibals, and subject to domination, the filmmaker denounced the epistemic aggressions carried out in the colonization process. The process, as with the other films analyzed in this article, occurs through the use of intimate and homemade photographs, thereby highlighting the questioning of the official source operated by such works. So, we conclude that in the analyzed films, the archive appears as a conflict. It is neither a nostalgic element nor a praise to the technique. The actions taken denote exclusions and absence, and in all cases the dialogue with access is present. Access of images, discourses, stimuli. It seems we have access to everything except what is important. For us, what connects these works is the call to create a space for preserving and sharing memory of archives that recognize the exclusions made by a large part of Western official archives and work successfully to fill these gaps. So thank you very much.